We want to welcome you network on Zingo TV channels 250 and 251. Zingo TV is a free app that can be downloaded on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire Sticks, Roku and Roku Sticks, and all TVs 2016 and forward. Live Now is a show all about finding the synergy and body-minded spirit. Please join us as we tackle intense topics of conversation that will spur your mind, steer your soul, and give you some direction. With that said, we are excited to dive into tonight's topic with you.
We're back. I hope that everyone is having a beautiful and safe evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. We're really excited, and I know we say that every single week, but it's true. And so the deal is that we decided to pick a topic tonight that a lot of people struggle with. I know I've had my challenges, and we'll get into all the synchronicities around it. So what if we just have a very simple conversation tonight? Would everyone be in agreement with that? Or you can do what I used to do in the past, and I can make it really, really complex. And then so we all leave a little more confused and befuddled by the conversation that's going on. So tonight's topic is simplicity versus complexity. And I know when Veenu and I were chatting about this, we're like going, holy smokes, this is so important. And I don't know why we haven't really gone into this deep, but we've kind of circled around it a lot with a lot of our other discussions over the last several months. So Veenu, how are you feeling tonight?
So I'm feeling great, Chuck. Thank you. And here's what I say, like one of our good friends, Joseph McClendon III, says, it's not rocket science. And I feel like a lot of people out there, we stay away from what we want to learn or the things that we think we can up level in our life because we think it's going to be so hard. You know, the people that have all the money, the people that have all the things in their life that it looks like it's so fun and exciting and they're so lucky, but it's so hard to get.
Right.
And here's the truth. It's not hard. And one of our friend Dean says that life is simple doesn't mean that it's easy, but it also doesn't mean that it's hard either. You know, we in our mind create these stories that make them hard.
Yes.
And we make things so complex. And to be honest, if we really start to dissect, or some people call it chunking down, we could really start to figure out what are the steps that we need to take to make it easy. So it doesn't need to be complex.
No, I love that. I love that. It's someone was asking me and they go, where did you figure out how to make things more simplistic? Because you'll describe something and it seems very, very simple. And I go, well, truth be told, it's because growing up, I didn't consider myself to be smart or the brightest kid. And so in order for me to understand something, I had to slow it down and make it uber simple. And I asked a lot of questions. And so I was like, okay, why? I said, well, they'd say it in a certain way. And I go, could you say it again in a different way? And they go, oh, you're just trying to be a smart aleck. I said, no, because I didn't understand what they said. So I said, would you mind? And they'd take a moment, then they'd re-say it. And I go, wow, that was really cool. I understand it now.
Right.
And I was taught something at an early age, Veenu, and that was if you're going to learn something, learn it so you can teach it to someone else.
Yes.
And I go, but if I don't understand it, I'm sure as heck not going to go out and start espousing. You know, it's kind of like if you meet with your financial planner and they say all this stuff and you're like, going, sounds good. Then you talk to someone else after. So what did they say? Oh, he said things about compounding interest and that it's good and the law of seven. And yeah, it was good conversation. He's got it all set up. Well, what was it specifically? I can't tell you.
Right.
Wait, what?
And it's almost like we try to make things harder so we don't have to do, because as we make things harder and we can't recite them or teach something, if we make things harder, we also can't integrate it. We also can't take action on it because we don't know where to start. And that's when I start. That's the cue for me, is that when I'm not doing something, how have I made it so hard and what do I need to do to simplify it? Because we take action on things that are easy.
Yes. Yes. And there's something that's interesting too, and that is complex doesn't equate to complexity.
Right.
And someone's like going, or complicated. We'll even call something oh, that's complex. And then someone go, oh, it's really complicated. It's like, no. Well, give me an example. Okay. How about a muffin? A muffin is very complex in its flavors, but it's simple when you look at the formulation. Now, an everything bagel, that's complicated. Why? Because it has protein and powders and collagen and all these different seeds. And you're going, that's a pretty complicated piece of baked goods by comparison to a muffin. They both have complexities, but one definitely has a lot more complication to it. And I go, that's interesting too, because my mind can't get wrapped around all of it. And so to your point, what are some of the ways how can we can slow down and just, to your point, some people chunk up and just make it bigger and more global. Some people chunk way down and they're getting right to the minutia of it. And all I know is this: in my life, when I have chunked so far down that I am so deep in it, it gets really complex and there's a challenge. It kills execution because you'll go into analysis paralysis and go, oh, but there's all these parts and pieces and like little screws, like putting a watch back together. Like, you've ever seen someone take apart a watch and put it back together? That seems very, very, very complex to me and complicated.
Right. Just going back to your analogy with the muffin and the bagel, if you know what you want, though, you can simplify that.
Yes.
Because I know that I need protein and nutrition, and I just ask the baker which one is going to give me the protein and the nutrition. And they say, well, probably not the nutrition you're looking for in either, but this one has more protein in it. Boom. Now I know which one I want. My mind simplified by just answering, what did I want? And
Yep.
sometimes that's a good way of asking it. If life is complicated to you, I would invite you now just to think about, what is it that you want and what do you feel is complicating it? Is it an answer that you don't want to make because it's hard? Well, what makes that answer hard? The fact that other people might be affected by it. The fact that you don't have a backup plan. Like, we can go through all these different things that make it complicated. And then ask yourself, well, what would make it simple? What would make it simple? And that's the thing that we don't ask ourselves. We don't ask ourselves enough, what's going to make this simple? We go right to the point where this needs to happen. This is what I need to do. Oh gosh, I got to do that. And then our mind goes, but that's too hard.
Right.
Okay, then I'm not going to do it. I'm going to procrastinate. I'll do it later. Maybe somebody else will give me the answer. And then I don't have to take responsibility for the answer. Somebody else did, because it's just too hard. When do we ask ourselves, what do we need to do to simplify it? What do we need to do to make it easy and get the results that we want?
I love that. It's kind of like going to the gym. You can get real complicated. Go, oh, I'm going to work these body parts today. I'm going to go for this much time. I'm going to listen to this music. Or you can just go, I'm going to the gym. Well, what are you going to do at the gym? Move my body, engage,
listen to music,
drink some water. But it's not like, I'm going to do this many reps in this sequence. And that level of complexity for some folks, and there's a difference. When, to your point, if you know the outcome, you know what you need, and there's a recipe. And I go, some people are really good at following recipes. Other people, you go, oh, so what's your recipe there? Oh, it's a pinch of this and a handful of that. And then you just shake it up. And then it's ish, it's like 350-ish in the oven for about maybe 20, 25, 30 minutes. Depends on your oven. I go, which one is it? Like, I need some instruction. And to your point, there's this area of around the 6 human needs where we go, when there's certainty around something, that creates simplicity. Let's think about that for a second. When you're certain, when there's that security, and you're like, hey, in the past, I've done this, boom. When I know that when I simplify this, I'm going to take mammoth action and it's going to benefit me. But you mentioned something, Veenu, and this is really uber important. There are people who will intentionally make things more complex.
Yes.
Now, why would someone do that?
I think there's different reasons. I think people make things complex because it's easier to avoid if it's complex.
Mm-hmm.
I think people make things harder because they get more significance when they can solve it.
Yep.
I think people make things harder because of the whole grandioso feeling. feeling that it's worth it. It's
Well,
worth it if I do it.
there's a level of like almost value proposition, right? It's like,
Correct.
ooh, it's more important. It has more veracity. Oh, you don't know what's involved with this.
Right.
And it's like going, okay, you pick it up, you turn it on, you use it. Like, what? Well, that's a rake. You pick it up, you pull, and if you're around a pile of leaves, it actually like gathers them up. And so part of this too, and I know we may sound like we're oversimplifying things, and the truth is, at times we can spend so much time up here that the complexity actually negates us from even engaging in anything.
Mm-hmm.
And people will talk themselves out of an opportunity just out of the fear, that false expectation that they built up in their own mind over the complexity of it. It's like, oh, I can't start a business. Do you know what's involved in that? I don't have the time to do all that research. And it's like, wow. Yet if you talk to the people who've been the most successful in business, it wasn't the jump off point. It wasn't the starting point. They're like, I just did it. I had
Right.
a desire. I had a drive. To your point, and thank you, my sister. I had a need. I wanted this so bad. Not even know how I was going to do it. But I kind of stumbled my way through the dark and I started talking to people. And when I made it about something bigger than me, all of a sudden it was like, wow, it took on a life of its own.
You know, if we also just think about when we were a little kid, learning 2 plus 2 was hard at one point.
Sure.
And now it's not so hard. You know, sometimes we get afraid of what's hard. Like I watch my kids that, are in 6th and 5th grade, and some things are so hard for them. And they get disappointed because they feel like they should know it. And I said, well, if you know it, you wouldn't be in this grade.
Mm-hmm.
You're in this grade to learn it. I said, and I always use the 2 plus 2 thing. I said, do you know how hard 2 plus 2 was for you? He's like, Mom, it was never hard. Yes, it was really hard for you. I remember you getting frustrated when you couldn't do it. And I said, but it's easy now. So what did you have to do to make it easy? Because success leaves clues.
Yes.
Help kids, help yourself, help your own brain to realize a lot of things that we're afraid to do, we've probably already done some of the same strategies in a different way to get the response that we need.
Mm-hmm.
So if we are looking at what have we done that we feel good about ourselves and how can we compare it? And when we've made things simpler, how we've been able to do that? What was the key thing to do? And sometimes it's just learning about it. It's, researching it more. It's asking people that have done it or have the answers. And then we realize it's not as hard as as we're making it be.
Right. Sometimes too, it's like that age old saying, right? It's not what was said, it's how it was said.
Yes.
And you're like going, wait, they just changed a couple things in the way that they delivered this. And I'll remind you too, as a person who is growing consistently every single day, the same exact thing that was said 2 months ago can be said today. And you're like going, wait, what? It was like a light, bing, the light bulb went off and you're just, wow, that hit in a different way. But of course, this is only when it comes to my kids and I'm giving advice. And then my beautiful friend gives the same advice. And they're going, she's amazing. And I said, I agree. And we discussed what they discussed. And then it's like going,
wait a minute. Didn't we just talk about that 2 weeks ago at the dinner table?
like, was I the only one listening to our conversation? Because, and I've learned, I just go, release it to the universe and be grateful. It's like,
Yes.
however they get the lesson, however you get the lesson, because here's the deal. We even have rules around how we get the lesson.
We do.
We do. Isn't it? Thank you. I feel so affirmed right now because I'm like going, I'm not the only freaky deaky person on this session where I'm like going, okay, I've got to get it this way and I got to get this fast and it has to be the right way. And it's like, what's the right way? I don't know. And yet we can teach this to everyone else. That's why we're talking, y'all. We're just reaching out to the universe and sharing love, light, and laughter and trying to, say, hey, you too can have this experience. You too can go ahead and feel connected and find more simplicity in your life. And on the other side, it's like going, do I still make some things complex? Uh-huh. Yep. And not because I'm trying to, but it happens. It definitely happens. So, what would you say to someone if they're saying, how do I know what I need? How do I know what I really, really need and want so that way I can actually be present to identify the simplest way to get there?
Mm.
Because if you don't know what you don't know, then sometimes it's a matter of, and I don't want to say experimenting, but I'll say venturing to try something new.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I think that when we look at, and I'm going to go back to one of the things that I teach a lot is like the life wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at different segments of the life wheel. Our spirituality, our finance, our career, our family, our relationships, our social, our health. And we can understand what a 10 does. Like if you had if you're on a scale of 1 to 10 and you're looking at the 10 on each category, what that would look like for you. I think that we need to be able to measure what's going on in our life. And that's why I like the life wheel, because the life wheel really sections different things. And I made one for kids too, because kids have a different life wheel than we do.
Yes.
And I could not find any. So I actually made one up versus because I coach kids so much, I was able to pull out what are some of the things that are in their life, different categories, like school versus work or career. And what I noticed is that when I've asked kids many times, like, what is it that you need or want? The best answer I can get is, I do not know.
Right.
But as soon as we do that life wheel, and I say, like, we have a scale of 1 to 10. And so I want you to think of every of these categories as a 10. Tell me what that would look like to you. Because we all have different definitions, because a 10 in your life is different than a 10 in my life. And so once they do that, and I ask them, I'm like, okay, so just to measure, a measuring stick, and that's a 10. Where are you at from 1?
Mm-hmm.
From 1 to 10, where are you at? And they say, well, I'm a 5. And I'm like, well, okay, so tell me, what does a 5 look like to you? And they tell me that. And I'm like, okay, so what would have to take you to a 6 or even a 7? And they're like, well, I would need X, Y, Z.
Yep.
I'm like, great. So now we know what you need. And that is a simple way that I help people figure out their needs.
That's beautiful. It's very chronological. It's very emotions based. And as you and I have discussed so many times with our audience, everything is emotional centered. When we boilerplate everything back down, we can justify in our minds. We can say we were guided by spirit. And I would still ask you, how does that make you feel when you know that you're guided? And they go, oh, I feel this way, Chuck. It's like, awesome. And so does that give you the certainty to move forward? And they go, 100%. From a scale of 1 to 10, 10. Awesome. How much variety do you have? And then they start, right? So now, as we say, if progress equals happiness, we say this in business all the time, but it's true in life as well. And possibilities create progress or feed progress. I go, what are the possibilities? And that's exactly what you just did so brilliantly, and in a very structured and simple, not complex. You getting this, y'all? And again, this isn't to be patronizing. This is to show you that there are different techniques that you can use in your communication styles with yourself and others to actually gain even more clarity and simplicity. And that's such a beautiful thing in today's climate, because all around us, there's this cacophony of information, noise, data, and some of it's real and some of it's just perceived. Like if you were to look at, we're not going to go down the road of politics, but that's just one banner. If you look at social injustice and you say Gaza, Taiwan, Ukraine, or the border, we can go on and on and on. There's all these nuances.
Right.
And it's like, oh, the injustice in the world. And it's like going, well, how about all the justice in the world too? Because if we're going to blame for everything that's challenging, we also get to blame effectively for everything that's beautiful. One of our mentors, the big guy, Mr. Robbins, has this propensity to say that, hey, blame effectively. So if you're going to blame for everything that's been challenging, also blame for who you are now, all the beautiful aspects of your life, because you wouldn't be the person you are if it wasn't for that context, for that contrast. And so I appreciate that lesson in learning. On the other side of it too, and I go, we're all so blessed to be living the lives, and like I'm blessed to be here with you, to be able to engage this beautiful community. And that's simple. Just living in great gratitude is so simple.
Chuck, what we search for is what we shall find. If we're going to look for everything bad, that's what we're going to find. If we're going to look for everything good, we're going to find. If we look for everything to be hard, that is what we're going to find.
Yeah, true.
And so, when we look at simplicity versus complexity, it's a great question is, what am I making so complex in my life that doesn't need to be?
Yes.
Loving someone does not need to be complex.
No,
You
no.
know, doing something for someone does not need to be so complex. I mean, now if you ask me to go like change the engine out of the car, that might be a little complex for me. But let me tell you how I'd simplify it. I would take it down to the shop down the road.
There you go. And so, and that's something else though too. One of the strategies for simplicity can be resourcefulness. That you don't have to have all the answers.
Right.
The simple response is, it's like going, I know my gifts. I'm going to let someone else live in theirs. But I love what you just said. What if your focus, or what we'll call your reticular activating system, was as simple as a pair of lenses?
Mm.
Wherever these look is the input and the insight that you're going to get. Because if these are facing behind you the opposite way, you're not aware of what's in front of you.
Correct.
But your focus is looking behind you at all the stuff that you're passing by or that you've already experienced. And so that reticular activating system in this beautiful brain that distorts, deletes, and generalizes information needs to be focused. So you can think of it like blinders or a big, cone. And you're just like, think of it like if you've ever seen your dog have to go to the vet and they have the cone of shame or silence, it's like, it's like, we were just like going, you can whisper and he can hear you from across the room, because it's like, it just funnels everything. And so what do? To pay attention, they go, huh? That's it. And it's wherever they focus their head. But stuff can be going on over here. You be snapping your fingers right on the other side of the cone, and they're like going, wait, what? I hear it, but I can't see it. That's the same way for us.
Right.
And I'm going to remind people of something too. And that is, you have these filters, as Veenu mentioned, and for some of us, it's visual, some for auditory, some are kinesthetic. And there are sometimes even, I'll say, olfactory and gustatory. You'll be triggered by something. So you may not have had like one of your favorite meals in the longest time. And you don't know why, but all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, that smells like homemade curry. Or, oh, that smells like Japanese fried rice. Ooh, doggy. It's like, I haven't had that in a long time because I watch your carbohydrates, but I could have a cheat night. Oh man. And it just triggers something in you. And it's not just that you're hungry. It's like memories, feel good feelings, all these different things that come along with it. No different than music. Like someone put a song on, all of a sudden you're like, hey, okay, like this is working for me. I don't know what this is, but I kind of like it. And then you go, I heard this song once someplace. You go, oh, I was on a beach in the DR or in Hawaii, and you're like, and all of a sudden it's like tropical, it's sunny outside, it smells like coconut oil, and you're just like, okay, this is awesome. So why do I go there? Those are simple responses to some complex triggers. But were they really complex? Someone's just playing a song. So that someone just happened to have curry. Someone just happened to give you a taste of something, or you heard something, or you saw something, and it immediately had a reaction in you. Those are beautiful things as well. When you know who you are too, and you can intentionally set those triggers off for yourself as well.
Right.
So there's this beautiful technique that Veenu and I learned a long time ago called stacking, and you can actually do this for yourself, where in the simplicity of things, you can actually stack emotions and feelings that will give you a higher level of connection. And they go, that sounds complex. And I go, no, it's really simple. This is the 1 + 1 = 2, or the 2 + 2 = 4 scenario. In the beginning, it seems so complex. And when you learn the simplicity of it, all of a sudden you're like, this is easy.
So Chuck, what about, like, I think that it'd be great to talk to our listeners also about hard versus complex. Because I believe that there's a difference. Do you?
100%. That's why I was talking about complex doesn't equal complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Complicated, what's the inclination? It's hard. Oh my gosh, this is going to take forever. And it's going to be expensive and take time. And I don't have that kind of time. I don't know if I'm that dedicated. And then you start even questioning, do I really even want this?
Right.
Right? You're like going, I don't know. Do I really need a six pack? Can I just sport the pony keg? Like, and people go, well, what do you mean? Well, I want like the washboard abs. I go, okay, great. You can have them. Are you willing to be who you need to be in order to get them? And I go, I don't know. It sounds like an awful lot of work. I can just stick with the pony keg. It's just one ab. It's like singular, slightly rotund. And it's like going, hey, built for comfort, not speed. And so it's like, what the heck are we talking about? I said, you will create complications for yourself when you know that if you make it complex enough that you just won't do it.
Right.
You'll create your own procrastination. You will create your own buffer zone of ineffective learning. And I'll just call it unlearning, because you're not learning anything. You are opting for comfort over growth.
Right.
And there's no growth in comfort. I'm sorry. And that doesn't mean that it has to be complexity that's feeding that. It can still be complex. Learning to walk was complex when you didn't know how to do it.
100%.
Making meals was complex. I know some people still today, ramen is a complex engagement. And I was like, that's boiling water and throwing the noodles in the water.
And again, going back to what Dean says, that life is simple, not easy.
Yes.
Because it doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be everything thrown at you to make it so complex in order for you to achieve it. You don't have to make it so like, oh, it's too complex, so it's too easy, and it's never going to be this way. How do you make life easy? The things that were easy in my life, I do not attribute to all the achievements I have. All the achievements that I have been able to create in my life have been hard.
You earned
Definitely
them.
been hard, but I earned them. However, they were simple to do.
Yes. So to your point, the action doesn't always equate to the commitment.
Correct.
And that's a huge defining factor. There are a lot of folks who will pull a book off the shelf and read something and go, that is so simple, till they attempt to engage and put it into practice. So I can show you that a push-up is simple. I can also show you how to make them really freaking complex. And what's the difference? Some people will make it complex right from the get-go and go, well, I want to be able to do those. It's like, oh, listen, Padawan, you need to learn how to crawl first. Why? Because you're burnt out after doing 10 of these bad boys.
Right.
10 of the advanced ones. And it's like, what would that do? It's not that you can't. There's also this thing called resistance. Gravity creates a natural resistance for us. If we didn't have gravity, though, you could jump for 50 yards. That would be impressive. And if everyone else could do it too, then you'd be like going, oh, but it's nothing special. Because we all can do it. We all can defy gravity. It's like, okay. And I will also remind you that with not enough gravity, you would fly off the face of the planet.
Right.
So why is this important? Without some resistance, you don't get the benefit, as to Veenu's point, of getting the lessons, the learnings, and the growth. And as human beings, we have this tendency, and that is, if it's too easy, we dismiss it that everyone can do it. Why? Because it was easy for you. That doesn't mean it's easy for everyone else. And then there's other things that other people are great at, and you go, oh, if I can only do that, that would be amazing. And you can.
Right.
Will it be as fast as someone else? Not necessarily. Will it be as proficient as someone else? Not necessarily. But here is what I know. If you only hang around people at your same level or lower, you will never grow higher than where you are now.
Right.
There's a comfort zone that will only take you to that level. And there's also this misconception, though, too, Veenu, and that is, oh, if I get in a peer group of people who are just pushing themselves to the limit, then I'm going to grow too because they're all pushing. And I go, that's not true.
Well, I think also, when we talk about how do we resolve complexity and create simplicity, besides asking yourself those questions of like, what do I need to make this simple? I think another thing is like, look for role models, look for people that have already done it in your life.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of people that have done it. And I'm not just talking about Dr. Google. I mean,
No.
I love Google, but I like things to be validated. So I go to people that I know have created that. Like when I was creating my business, I went to friends that know how to create businesses, people that have created businesses because they've already done it.
Right.
Versus going and getting the steps. Because when I read the steps, it was very complicated.
Oh, yeah.
It's very, very complicated. And I'm like, there's got to be a simpler way to do this. I know it's not going to be easy.
Right.
But this is too complicated. So I started to figure out who could I get to role model?
Mm-hmm.
Who would be willing to help me to do what I want to do so I can simplify, get out of the complexity of life.
Yes.
And make what I need to make. And that's exactly what I've done, and now I'm an instructor for a coaching institute. And that's one of our key visions or, rules or whatever we call them. It's to assassinate complexity.
Yes.
How do we make it simple? To go further, faster in our life, we have to assassinate complexity. We need to make it simpler for you to understand, because if you understand it, you're going to do it. And if you do it, you're going to teach it. You're going to share it. You're going to help other people do it. And to your point earlier is that if it's so complex, you're not going to share it to anyone. You're not going to do it because it's just going to be too difficult to get in there and do it.
And there's a lot of overwhelm that comes from I'll say, pushing past the envelope of understanding.
Yeah.
And someone's like, okay, like what? Have you ever seen a cake that was like so dolled up with frosting and beads and piping and you're like, I don't even want to eat it. It looks like a piece of artwork. And yet I'm still reminded that inside of all that decoration, all the things and stuff, all the 20 layers is still cake. It's like, because what do they call it? They go, oh, it's a masterpiece. I go, it's cake.
It's cake.
And if someone doesn't eat it, it's going to perish. It's going to get old. It's like, you don't go, ooh, they uncorked a cake. It's not like a wine. You don't stick it in a room for 100 years and go, ooh, no, that's a fine cake. 1973 was a good year. And you're like, not for cake. Maybe for a wine, but not for cake. So to your point, part of this is slowing down so you can simplify. Because what happens with speed, it's kind of like a snowball. If a snowball rolls slowly, it actually packs the snow more firmly, but it doesn't get as big. In fact, it will only take on as much as it can hold and then it'll stop. But if you have a steep slope, that little snowball turns into this behemoth avalanche by the time it gets to the bottom. And you're like Barry going, I can't move. Oh, it's too heavy. It's too much. Well, it is, because there's so much that's piled on you at that point. So there's this tendency, and then we go, ooh, I'm growing like crazy. I'm moving. And like, that's great. I know there's a universal rule, though, that speed kills, and it's indiscriminate. I've never heard someone saying, I died because I slowed down. Now, why do I get so graphic about that? Well, because we're making it simple. And the simplicity is if you create some gravity around something, you'll get the lesson faster too. Because there are certain things you will do everything to avoid, and then certain things you will always do because it moves you towards those outcomes and goals that you've committed yourself to. But Veenu said it, and this was so brilliant. You need to commit. Because without action, you can't measure what's not moving. Have you ever seen something that just sat there and didn't move, and you're like going, I'm waiting for it to blink. I'm waiting for it to give me a sign of life, something. And they go, I don't think it's moving. What do they call that when something's not moving?
Stagnant?
Dead. Like, I'm like going, it's
Yeah, I guess it'd be dead too.
yeah, I mean, hey, with the weather we've been having lately, if I see something out there that's not moving, I'm like going, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because the fact is, there needs to be some meaning behind the madness of what we're trying to discuss. And that is, it can't just be that everything's moving at such a rapid pace of speed that you can't slow down. If you don't slow down, you're going to crash.
Right.
If it's a curve, even on a straightaway. But if you slow down, and I'm not saying stop, slow down and be aware. Because all I've ever found, Veenu, is that when I slow down, it helps me reconnect. And I don't know about you, but I know we both had times in our lives where we've gotten a lot of momentum and everything just seemed like it was flying at you, with you, to you, for you. It was like, oh, couldn't get any better. Oh, and then you have another experience. I go, oh my gosh, but that made it even so much better. It's like, I thought I was already at the pinnacle. And to your point, even on the life wheel, this is where I go, the life wheel is an evolution.
Yeah, it's constantly turning.
It is. It's constantly turning and turning over and evolving. And I go, isn't that beautiful? There are some people who live in a perpetual cycle of living at what I'll call level 7, level 8. They're in constant growth. They haven't reached the pinnacle yet, and they're not worried about it. They're not overly chastising themselves for not like, ooh, I'm the leader in the industry. I own this space. It's my world. Ah, ha, ha, ha. No, they're like going, okay, I don't need to be number one.
Right.
I get to be me. I get to make an impact. I get to have a great reputation. You said something earlier too, and this was really important, as I've had this experience with a couple people now. They get to a point where they go, oh, I have all the financial freedom. Because they go, I just had $10 million. I'm going to tell everyone to kiss off. I'm going to be on a beach in Aruba and find me. Come play if you want, but find me. And then all of a sudden, they have all this money. You know, going, why aren't you in Aruba? Dude, do you know how much time it takes to like get all this organized and to manage $10 million? I go, oh, it's a full-time gig. Go, well, you never said anything. I said, you didn't have $10 million. Now you do. How's that working out for you? Because you had this grandiose vision as to what your life was going to look like. They go, so how do people do it with billions? I said, they have processes. They have procedures.
They simplify it. They make it simple.
They have people.
Yep.
And those people are there to simplify, because now they've learned how to delegate. And this is where in your own life, to your point, Veenu, this is how some of us can do this too. We can actually start to delegate certain things that don't serve you and that aren't fulfilling you.
You know, one of the things that I've talked about is that when, especially in this new year, we're still in January, we started a new year. A lot of people look at like, what do I want in my life? Like, what do I want to create this year? What's this year going to look like? Sometimes we need to simplify our life. We need to take out what's not working for us. We need to take, a look at what in our life have we got so comfortable with that is not serving us. What do we need to let go of to create the space for more to come and really just simplify life? I was telling my husband as we were like putting floors, I think last year, the year before, we were putting new floors in our house, and we were in his office, which is also our guest bedroom. And there was so much stuff in here. And I'm like, we need to simplify it. We need to get rid of, like, if we don't know we have it, why do we have it? Create the space.
Yes.
Complexity is also clutter.
We can also have complexity in our emotions.
Yes.
And forgiveness equates to freedom. And sometimes being able to let go of the old luggage, the old story, the old guilt, the old, it's like, how long is enough time to carry something and be remorseful? What if you were remorseful, got the lesson, and then you set it free? So now it wasn't a plague on you. It wasn't a legacy on your family. And it wasn't this thing that was held over everyone's head. And to your point, if you've been keeping things for more than a year, emotional, spiritual, physical, things in your house, you haven't used it in a year. You don't even freaking know yet. You go, oh my gosh, it's still in the box. I go, maybe, just maybe, it's a time to gift it and let someone else have the gift of receiving something that you didn't even need in the first place. Because if you really needed it, you would have found it. You would have utilized it. They go, oh no, but I just misplaced it. And I said, how many emotions, how many things in your life, outcomes have you misplaced that we got shiny penny? Something else came along that met our need at a higher level. And that thing that we swore we needed, for me, it was that G.I. Joe with a Kung Fu grip when I was 7 years old. I had to have this freaking thing with a bionic eye and everything else. And I was like, come on, man. I know the things you remember, right? I'm having a flashback. Yeah. Thank you, God. I don't know why that came into me, but it did. And I was like but I had to have it. And I didn't get it that year, but I got it the next year. You know what? I was like, hey, look what you got. I'm 8. That's so 7-year-old dad. That's like not G.I. Joe, Kung Fu grip. No, I really liked it still, but I was like, why? Because now I was into my bike. So part of this is where your focus goes. Again, that reticular activating system, where's your satellite aimed? And how does it make you feel? Because I'm going to remind everyone of this too. We'll go to the gym, we'll make progress, we'll get to that target weight. You're in those jeans or that dress or that bikini or that outfit, and the guy's going, yeah, I look good in this muscle shirt. And you go, yeah, I look great in this summer dress. It's like, okay, awesome. And then all of a sudden you take your foot off the gas pedal. Mm-hmm. And then I go, oh yeah, that dress, that was from 6 months ago. Woo, it's the holiday season now. I put on a couple LBs, and it's like going, oh, were your outcomes different? Well, it's not. Hear the language, but it's not summer right now. I don't need to be that strict. We're celebrating. It's the holiday season. I go, oh, so health and vitality goes out the window then? But it comes back on when clothing gets more scantily? Wait, what? Interesting. That's a unique strategy for adjusting one's health and vitality. And so why do we go there? We get to feed ourselves and fuel ourselves. And we have this saying in our neck of the woods, and that is, ordinary things done consistently produce extraordinary results. Well, what if your commitment is to increasing the level of simplicity in your life? Would that actually help feed you in all aspects of your life, where now in faith, family, fitness, finance, fun, and fantasy, you're like living at a higher elevation because now your standards are higher, but you're able to share more of it. And they go, right. Oh, that seems complex. You're growing like crazy. You're like, going, and it's been really simple. Right.
And another tool or strategy, if you would, to create the simplicity from complexity is organization. Like, organize your life. Organize, like that's one of the things that I am teaching my 11-year-old twins now, because I want life to be simple for them. Mm-hmm. And things get complex in our brain and in our life when we have so much to do and there's no organization to it. Get a plan together. What is that going to look like? How are you guys going to work together? And like you said earlier, Chuck, is like delegate. Yeah. Delegate responsibility, because you know what? Even our kids, as much as our kids like, oh, I don't want to do it. When they do it and you compliment them, they feel like they're part of the family. It gives them so much worth. Yeah. So when you were talking about simplifying also means giving worth, giving gratitude. It's teaching, it's a role model for our kids, and you're setting them up to win as they go further in their life as well, because they're watching you. Yeah. They're watching you be organized. They're watching you know where things are and how they need to be, because then you get things done efficiently.
It's like the easiest example I can give is sports. So growing up in martial arts, it was one of those things where when you see people sparring, and I go, if you get sidetracked when you're in a sparring session, it's not good for anybody.
It's not.
In particular, you. And so if it's soccer, You're not out there doing your nails while you're on the soccer field. You're not picking daisies. You're engaged. So you're being deliberate. You're being aware and present. And part of this is where is your presence?
Mm-hmm.
Now, people go, oh, people always talk about presence. I said, well, let's look at that for a moment. Part of the word presence is present. That's the preface in this. And I go, so the present is your gift to yourself and others.
Yep.
The essence of presence is that I don't have to. The essence of it is I will be my best so I can do my best. And when we're coupling these together, all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, I'm aware, I'm here, I'm present, and I'm living in my essence.
So beautiful.
And it makes such a big difference because now it's like, that's what presence is. If you're going to be, I'll just say, absent, then that's a very different ideology. Because really what you're doing is you're being dismissive. Are you worth it? Is your time worth it? For the set time, this is why I love time blocking so much, because I know practices from this to this, my unbridled focus. I'm not wearing my street shoes. I'm not wearing my, my Sunday best. I'm wearing cleats and shorts, the uniform, whatever the curriculum is to play that sport.
Right.
I'm not out there with a badminton. I'm out there with a soccer ball. And I go, so being deliberate, being prepared, and focusing. Now your focus goes from here to here.
Because what you seek, you shall find.
Yes.
So focus on the things that you want to bring into your life. Focus on the things that you want to simplify in your life. If things aren't working, ask yourself, have I made it too complex? And do I need to simplify it?
Well, so, and add on to that real quick, the answer is yes. And it's always. What you focus on is what you will get, always. But if you've prioritized complexity over the actual outcome or the experience, you're going to find complexity.
Yeah.
And
because that's really what you're focused on. That's really what you're focused on. You're focused on the complexity of it, not the outcome of it.
Right. And so people are like, wait, no, I'm not. And I go, So it's not in one thing. We're focusing on the complexity in everything.
Right.
Why? Because, you don't know how, you don't know how busy my life is. You don't know what I go, you're right. Because I learned how to simplify.
But if you use some of these tools that you and I have been talking about tonight, you can make your life more simple.
Yes.
You can create more time to spend with your loved ones or your hobbies or your purpose, and less time sitting there thinking like life is so complex. I don't want to do it. I don't want to touch it. Yeah.
Fill your cup back up. Fill your cup back up. Because complexity, all it does is it drains out. It's like having a crack in the bottom of it. All it does is it stops you from feeling and seeing and hearing and knowing what you really deserve.
Right.
We could go on and on about this one because it opens up Pandora's box in all these different areas. But no, Veenu, to your point. So I'm going to remind you all, go back to what Veenu had mentioned earlier. Ask yourself, what do I really need? What do I really want? And get clear on it. And write it down. Write it down so it's real for you. So you don't go, oh, what was that? What did I say I really need? No, write it down. Put a date on it and memorialize it.
Make it real. Make it real.
It's always a treat to spend time with you. I love our conversations and our dialogue. So thank you, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for our listeners, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Live Now with Veenu Keller and Chuck Hogan. Follow us on Instagram at Veenu Inspires and at Chuck Hogan Now. For more about Veenu, please visit VeenuInspires.com. And for Chuck, please check out YBLNow.com. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca for all your news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.